Have you ever walked away from a conversation with your spouse thinking, gosh, how did that blow up so fast out of nowhere? You replay it in your head and you think, well, that's not what I meant. Why did they take it that way? If that sounds familiar to you, then this video might be one of the most important ones that you listen to for your marriage. Because here's the truth that you might not be aware of. When you get into a fight with your spouse, you're not actually arguing about the same thing. You're not reacting to the same reality. You're actually reacting to two completely different internal representations of what just happened. What the heck do I mean by that? Well, if you're not familiar with this term, neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP captures this process in one phrase: the map is not the territory. And in simple terms, what that simply means is that the way that we experience and interpret the world is not the same as the reality itself. Each one of us walks through life with an internal map, a mental picture made up of our past experiences, made up of our beliefs, our emotions, our upbringing, values, wounds, expectations. And this map shapes how we see, hear, and make sense of what actually happened to us. Well, what do I mean by all of this, and why does it matter? Well, in marriage, it matters because most conflict doesn't come from what actually happened. It comes from each person's interpretation of what happened. And when you understand this, it can dramatically reduce conflict in your marriage. Now, don't worry, you don't need to know everything about NLP itself for this to make sense. I'm going to break it down for you. Now, like I said, alluded to before, think of it like this. You and I, we walk through life with our own internal map. And that map, like I said before, is shaped by our past experiences, our beliefs, and so on. However, the problem is that we forget that our map is not reality itself, and neither is our spouse's. And this matters because when you're under stress, right? When you're feeling unseen or emotionally worn down, your brain fills in gaps quickly. It doesn't just hear words, it hears meaning. You don't just notice behavior, you assign intent. And without realizing it, you start reacting to your map and not to your spouse. And guess what? Your spouse is doing exactly the same thing, but from their internal map. And this is why two people can walk away from the same conversation about the same issue feeling completely different about what just happened. Let me give you a really simple example. Again, just a marriage example, right? So, and you've probably had this kind of conversation before. Your partner says to you, your spouse says to you, listen, we need to talk about our finances, right? That's the territory, the actual words that have been spoken. But there are a couple of different maps that are going on that this can come from. One partner hears, well, you might hear, oh gosh, I'm failing. I'm not providing enough. I'm disappointing them. And the other person is thinking, I'm really scared about the future and I don't want to carry this alone. It's the same issue. Let's have a talk about our finances, the same moment, but two completely different experiences of that moment and interpretations of that one phrase, let's talk about our finances. And the argument that follows isn't actually about money at all. It's about how you both interpret the words from your internal map. And that's one of the reasons why conflict in marriage can get and feel so personal so quickly because we don't respond to what our spouse actually said. We respond to what our map tells us it means. And once our emotions are activated, we stop being curious and we get on the defensive mode. We assume intent. We fill in the gaps. We distort or generalize what's going on. We delete a bunch of other information so we can focus in on what we think is important to us. But here's the shift that changes everything. When you realize that your map, is not the territory, something powerful happens. You stop assuming your interpretation is the truth. You become curious instead of reactive, and you make room for understanding instead of defensiveness. You stop turning differences into personal attacks. Now, this doesn't mean that your feelings and emotions go away or that they don't matter. They absolutely do. It simply means that your feelings are signals from your map, not proof of your partner's motives. Healthy communication in marriage begins when you can pause and ask, what might my spouse be experiencing from their map right now? And that one question creates space for empathy, space for clarity, space for connection instead of conflict. And often that space is exactly what a struggling marriage needs most. And if your marriage feels stuck in misunderstandings and emotional reactions or constant tension, it's not that your marriage is in trouble or doomed or anything like that. Sometimes it's a case of understanding and learning, hey, you know what? I need to do things differently. What other tools can I use? What's a different lens I can look through this situation with? And like any new skill, it takes time, it takes practice. And if you want to learn more about this particular principle to help de-escalate and avoid conflict and create connection instead, without trying to figure it out on your own, well, I've created a free community, especially for women who love God, but they feel like that they're at a crossroads in their marriage and they would love some practical tools. It's a space for reflection, growth, support, without shame or pressure. You'll find the link in the description below. And if this video helped you and made you stop and think, wow, you know what, that makes sense, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.